Good afternoon, and welcome to another session of Notes from the Route. This is session 17. This is session 17, and we're going to talk about the struggle between art and urgency. Art and urgency. Before we get started, a few admin notes. Again, my name is Jared. If you haven't met me before, we do this show every Monday through Thursday at noon Eastern Time, right here on Google+. You can also watch it on YouTube or on my website, jaredforte.com/live. I would love it if you would follow me on Twitter and continue the conversation if you're active on that network or wherever you find me. I'm more than willing to engage in conversations about the ideas that we talk about on NFTR. This topic came up to me, or I was made aware of it. It became intriguing to me when I was listening to a discussion on a show called Intelligence Squared, which is a podcast that's out of Great Britain. I think this particular episode was actually filmed in Hong Kong, but they were talking about whether or not art schools produce good artists. And I'm neither here nor there on that. I'm not a visual artist myself. I never went to art school. But I thought it was interesting that a lot of the arguments against art education was geared towards the practicality of it, the urgency of being able to sustain yourself with a career that costs so much money with an education that costs so much money to attain. And it made me think about art as it exists in the world, in all the various ways, and how it butts up against the day-to-day things that we feel compelled to do in order to survive. The way that we approach our work and the way that we do things that seem to be void of any real art or creative instinct or drive. So it made me start thinking about that, and a paradox. I think that everyone has the capacity, even if you don't identify yourself as being someone who is artistically inclined or who has a deep appreciation for art. Everyone has a capacity to be moved by great art wherever they encounter it. Sometimes it's a visual piece, sometimes it's a piece of music, or some other experience that has the ability to stir something up in you emotionally. And I think that when we see that, or we encounter that, and we see people who can create those experiences for us, we tend to place them on a pedestal. So on that level, we understand the value, we appreciate the value of the art. But the paradox is, at the same time, in many cases, for whatever reason, we don't see the value of investing that type of artistic or creative energy into our own work. We might opt for things that we think are more direct, practical, tactical, however you want to describe it. And one of the reasons why we may lean in that direction is because perhaps we don't feel we have the capacity to create a moving experience, an artistic experience that impacts a person the way that we've been moved by the art that someone else created for our benefit or that we had a chance to see. So we devalue it, and maybe it's because we're opting out because we don't think that we can produce it. So the question is, even though we devalue it, we marginalize it in the way that we conduct our lives on a day-to-day basis. The question remains: is it valuable? It is. I contend that it is, and I want to try to frame this conversation in a way that perhaps you will understand why I feel that way. I want to kind of bring it home and make it clear that it's probably not a good idea to dismiss dismiss the need for art and to relate it to the real work that you do every day. Now, I frequent art galleries. One of the reasons that I moved into a city, I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I used to live out in the country, but one of the reasons that I moved into the city was so that I could have easier access to some of these cultural activities. I like to go to galleries and museums and experience different types of artistic expression. Now, I haven't been trained. I don't have any formal appreciation or indoctrination in visual art, because that's usually the first thing that pops in your mind when you say art. You think about things that you can see, but I do appreciate it. And most people, even if you aren't the type who goes out of their way to witness art or go to galleries, most of us experience art. The art that we experience and the impact of that art is hidden in the design of the things that are around us, whether that's an object, a thing that we can see or hold, or whether it's a process or an experience that we're taken through. In any case, it's that experience that the art gives us that makes it special. So that's what art does. It creates the experience. And what moves us, I know what moves me when I see something that, is that I think has sort of an artistic merit, is the evidence of care. When you see something that is evident that the person who created it thought about it. They thought about the experience that they wanted me to have when they created it. There was an intent to stir some emotion in me and to make me think and make me feel something, whether it's a pleasant feeling of going through a painless process where someone has designed the way that they organize their checkouts at a store that's really well laid out, merchandise well. You go in there and it's a good shopping experience. You feel good going around there, and you probably spend more money. So that experience, the evidence of care, is what stands out. And I don't think that anyone, whatever your job is or whatever the work is that you're putting into the world, I don't know that anyone can really afford to dismiss the value of having evidence of care in the product or the service that you bring into the marketplace. That's not something that I think that we can afford to opt out of as creative people, as producers who make things, provide services in the world. If you don't care, and if there's no evidence of care in the work that you produce, then your customer has options, limitless options. Your competition is right there waiting to pick up the pieces. So I think that sometimes our carelessness, and I know for me, I'll speak for myself. Carelessness for me at times has been something of a defense mechanism. Meaning, I do things, I do work that might not be as polished, or I don't really go all in because maybe the best that I could do at the time isn't good enough. And as long as I have that reserve, that's sort of like an internal alibi, that if the work is rejected, if the goal isn't met, if there is no impact of what I do, at least I know that it wasn't my best that got rejected. I can maintain something of my ego intact, and I don't have to really face the quality of face the reality about the quality of the work that I did, the relevance of the work that I did, because I can always fall back on that lie that, well, it didn't work, but I wasn't really trying that hard. And that's been a curse for all my life. I find myself holding back because I didn't want to experience my best being shot down. But one of the things about art, for it to work, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be all in. It does have to be fully invested with the care and intent of the person who created it. It's not going to be perfect, but there is something there. There's an element there. There's a humanness there. And the word that goes around a lot now is authenticity or vulnerability. All the things that make a connection with a person only come out when you really go all in emotionally with the work that you're doing. And when you do that, there is going to be a care. You do want to create a certain experience, even if you fail to get the impact that you're looking for. That care and that intent will shine through in your work. See, it's not just about the output. It's the intent. And I know that can seem like an esoteric idea, but even when your work has flaws, even when your message is not as clear and sharp or precise as you would like for it to be, even when things kind of fall apart in the process of delivering your product or your service, your customer can see, your audience can see if it's coming from your heart, if it's coming from a place where it is your desire to serve. So what is your intent? That's the first question. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Why are you creating this thing or producing this thing? Are you trying to add value? Are you trying to make a connection with a customer or with an audience? Are you trying to make some sort of impact with a message? That intent will come through even if the output at any given time is imperfect. And so that's why I think it's important. And I want you to think about art. And I admonish myself as I look back and think through these ideas. Art is about creating that experience for people, an experience that communicates the care and the intent I have around the work that I'm producing, or the service that I'm providing, or the connection that I'm making with the person, with the audience. So that's the value of it. And I don't think that anyone, as noisy as the environment is, if you're operating on the internet, if you're operating in social media, where it is that you are encountering your audience or your customers or the people with whom you're trying to build a connection, you can't opt out of care, because, and that's what art is about. So I think that kind of handles the opt-out part. We can't afford to dismiss it anymore. We can't afford to devalue it because we think we can't do it, because we can. As long as we care, that's the only prerequisite for creating art, is caring and having the intention of creating an experience for another person with the work that you do. So let's talk about the urgency part of the question. Where does that come from, and what is that about? I think that the root of urgency, or the cause of urgency, is trying to do too much. We have a sense that there's always another channel, always another task, always another thing that needs to be done, and it's easy to get overwhelmed with the opportunities that are available to you. And it's easy to fall victim to option anxiety, and it could cause you to either freeze or and not do anything substantial, or it can confuse you and lead you to do the wrong things that won't have an impact, or won't make a connection, or don't serve your intention. So the way to deal with the sort of the challenge of creating art is to manage scope. Sure, you can't do everything well. If you have a service, if you are working with clients, or you have something that you're creating, it has to be something that is specific enough or narrow enough that you can do it well. And that, because what happens when your project starts to sprawl, or whatever it is that you're working on, once it gets too big, that's when it gets sloppy. That's when your care and your intent gets obscured by all of the features and all of the different distracting elements in what you're trying to do. So the way to arrive at a place where you can invest some care, aka art, into the work that you do, is to trim it back, to scale it back to the essential part that matters the most to you. What is the most important thing about the work that you're doing? The essential piece. When you focus on that, and you focus your energy on that, then you have the opportunity to make it special, so that when someone encounters it, it creates a space where they can experience that care and that intent and that energy that you put into it. Art always has a focus, even if it's abstract and wild and you don't understand it. There's a frame, there's a story, there's a message there. If it's good art, there is something there, and we have this sort of grand. I know I do. I have sort of this grand vision of art being this big, free, wild, just totally unstructured thing. But in order for a message to happen, there has to be a frame. Even if it's a painting that's abstract, it's limited by the dimensions of the canvas that it's appearing on. So the challenge that we have sort of in the digital landscape is that digital has a limitless quality. There is no marginal cost in creating a digital artifact. Once you make something one time, you can make limitless copies of it. Once you access one channel, there's a dozen other channels following right behind. There's this real limitless idea, it's like limited opportunity in the digital realm. And that can be an overwhelming thing. A good example to think about the difference between that sort of limitless idea and limiting and enforcing constraints is, it comes from the music business. Some of the most memorable music in the history of American music is the Motown era, recorded in the 60s. A lot of that music was recorded in one room on 3 tracks. And it's special. You hear it, the energy is there, the important thing about the songs came through, even though they were dealing with these constraints. In modern music, the tools have unlimited tracks. You can put anything in there that you want. You can experiment with all different combinations of sounds, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your output or the product is going to be special. So the constraints or the limiting of the scope is what will allow you to deal with the urgency part, to deal with the fact that how can I make this special when there's so much left to do? So how do you set the frame? How do you decide what the constraints are going to be? Well, you have to start with what you care about and what your intention is, and make the hard decision to let go of those things that fall outside of that. Now, one of the most powerful constraints is live. What I mean by that is live performance art is different than visual art in that it's an event. It takes place at a particular in a particular place at a particular time. It's ephemeral. It doesn't last forever. It's a moment. All of the work is done ahead of time leading up to this event. And whatever is going to happen right then at that place. And that makes it really special. Now, live is never perfect. If you listen to a live performance, it doesn't sound like the album. It doesn't sound like the recording. A live stage play has unexpected things that happen that you won't see in a movie, let's say. But there's something special about that. And there's an energy to it that has the ability to make a connection with a person that is unlike anything that's canned or recorded or premeditated. There's something special about live. And the reason it's a constraint is that it's one and done. Either you were there or you weren't there. You get up there, it's sink or swim. It's a scary proposition. But I think that one of the great things is you have the opportunity in the work that you do to imbue the constraint of live in your work. Live for some people may be that sales call. There's a lot of things that you can do in the virtual world, in the online world, to connect with people, to get your message across to the masses. But then there's also something extremely special about being able to pick up the phone and talk to a customer. There's a different energy to that. That's rare, and it can be special if you have the courage to do it. Art requires courage. That sales call can be a work of art. That presentation that you do in front of a group of people in your local community can be a work of art. all the things that you can do to make a one-on-one connection with another human being has the potential. Those things have a potential to be elevated to art. And I challenge you, just as I challenge myself every day, to value that and to not dismiss that value, to not sell myself on the lie that I'm not capable of producing art, that I'm not capable of communicating the care that I have for the work and the impact that I intend to make with my message. So if you have any comments or questions or input, I would love to hear it. You can post your comments on G+, on YouTube. You can connect with me on Twitter. Again, my Twitter handle is thisjarrett. I would love to hear your feedback. Again, we'll be back tomorrow. This is Monday. I see you on Tuesday. Monday through Thursday, we do it at 12 noon. Thanks for checking in. I'll see you next time.